I've always enjoyed the top-down, arcadey F1 racing games from the past, and when I saw Grand Prix Rockin' Wrestling, a new one coming out, I was definitely interesting. But does the game end up speeding its way to the finish line, or does it just end up crashing and burning? Grand Prix Rockin' Racing is a very lackluster and disappointing racing experience. The game has a couple of minor bright spots, featuring up to 4 players multiplayer on the same system, as well as 10 different tracks from different world locations, though I'm sure none of them are actually based on any real-world tracks. The game's main mode is the Grand Prix Championship, where you get to upgrade your car, go through all 10 of the races for the world tracks, and can even be played up to 2-player multiplayer, which actually is a pretty cool feature, I have to say. At the end of all 10 races, whoever has the most points is the Grand Prix champion, and it actually can be played multiple seasons in a row where you get to keep the upgrades you've already earned for your car going into the next season, though the order of the tracks always remains the same for each season as you're progressing, and obviously eventually once you max out your car, you probably won't have as much trouble beating the races and finishing them first than you did when you first start up. And that's where the problem really ends up lying, is when you first start off. Your car has no stats to it. There is a total of 20 racers in each race, and if you finish anything below 15th, which is extremely easy to do, especially with no upgrades to your car, you only earn 1 upgrade point, so trying to upgrade your car and actually be able to compete with the AI can be rather difficult. In fact, until I completed all 10 races one time, I was still struggling to be able to do anything in these races. Even once you're able to get used to the game's ridiculously poor handling and get some upgrades, it can still be extremely frustrating, easily being able to spin out because of just all the chaos of the amount of cars, and once you're just back a little bit, it can be really difficult to actually catch up until you've maxed out all the stats of your car. It's really hard to emphasize just how poor the handling of the cars is unless you play it yourself, which is something I definitely recommend you do not end up doing. There is some fun moments, some of the crashing and just the overall hecticness of the bunches of cars as they're moving around the first few turns of a race are probably the most enjoyment I got out of the game. A lot of times, the only reason I wasn't finishing near the bottom of the pack was because so many cars ended up crashing and just stayed on the edge of the road. Now, if you end up getting flipped over or you crash, you can reset your racer so you can get back on the track. There's no damage meter in the game or anything like that, so the cars should have been able to get back on the track, but their AI just eventually seems to die. There was a couple of times where it was like a car graveyard as I was going around, with so many cars just on the side of the roads or flipped over altogether. If you do decide to check out this game for whatever reason, be sure to turn down the audio, mostly the announcer. The music's okay, though there's very little tracks. I think, in fact, there's maybe 1 or 2 music tracks at all that end up playing for every race, but the announcer is one of the most annoying announcers in gaming history. He has about 3 lines of dialogue, and he says the same things at least 10 to 20 times per race. After 2 races, I had to mute the TV. I couldn't hear "this race is on fire" or "this race is super excellent" anymore before I was just gonna have to turn off the game and stop playing. That's how annoying this announcer is. Besides Grand Prix, there is the same system multiplayer, there is no online, as well as a time trial mode, and in that, you actually have a car that kind of has straight down the middle statistics with a few points in every category. It actually isn't too bad to play a race like that. If the Grand Prix had started like it does for the time trials, it probably would have been a more enjoyable game from the get-go, instead of being ridiculously frustrating until I was finally able to get a strong enough vehicle to actually be able to compete. From the technical side of things, the game didn't slow down on me, it didn't crash on me, there was no really major glitching of any kind. The graphics for the cars and all weren't too bad, but man, the audience is wow. Some really bad low-res sprites, especially on the few little civilians that are sometimes on the sides of the track. Just absolutely atrocious looking graphic-wise for this game. One of the only bright spots about the game is the fact that it's only $7.99 on the PlayStation 4, which I still think is more than what you should pay for something like this, but it does feature a full trophy list and a platinum if you want to go after that. While Grand Prix Rockin' Racing is not the worst racing game I've ever played, it's one of the worst I've played, at least in recent memory. It can be a bit fun, especially with some friends, but the Grand Prix was more of a chore to play through, especially on that first time through, than honestly it was worth. In the end, I'm going to be giving the game a 3 out of 10. But anyway, guys, that's going to wrap up this review. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.